Hey guys, tonight we explore something strangely wet, mildly cursed, and thoroughly forgotten. Medieval rain rituals, and yes, why crops had a suspicious fear of Thursdays. You're about to wander through misty fields where villagers whispered to clouds, chickens predicted thunderstorms, and one poor monk tried to outsmart the weather with nothing but a feather and hope. Oh, and spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive your first Thursday in this village. Not because of monsters or war, but because apparently wheat takes its revenge. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this little sleepy history community reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down a muddy path just outside a village that has no name on the map. Not that there is a map. The year is somewhere in the mid-1200s, but no one here cares about that. They care about Thursdays. You've arrived on a Wednesday, which the locals call Skywatch Eve. And yes, everyone's a little on edge. A wiry boy with a crooked tooth offers to sell you a potato if you promise not to look at the clouds until morning. You decline politely. He shrugs and mutters, "Your crops, your funeral," and disappears behind a haystack. It's not raining, but it will. You walk past the chapel. A group of parishioners kneel outside, heads bowed to the sky. Not in prayer, just watching. Apparently, they believe the clouds can read their faces. One woman wears a chicken feather on her tongue for moisture balance. You try not to make eye contact. Inside the tavern, where the floor is mostly dirt and the ceiling mostly spider webs, the barkeep explains why Thursdays are cursed. It started with Elric, he says, polishing a mug that definitely hasn't been cleaned. Farmer Elric planted rye on a Thursday. It sprouted upside down. You blink. He nods solemnly. Then came Ada. She spun wool on a Thursday. It rained sideways for 2 weeks. The sheep caught vertigo. This is apparently all the evidence needed to confirm that Thursdays anger the weather spirits. No one plants, weaves, or even washes their feet on a Thursday anymore. The crops, they say, get jealous if you're too clean. It sounds ridiculous, of course, but just outside the tavern hangs a sign, "Thursday offerings mandatory." Beneath it, a wicker basket filled with old bread crusts, a wilted leek, and one soggy playing card. Back outside, the clouds are gathering, slowly, like they know you're watching. A kid throws a rock at the sky. His grandmother whacks him with a stick and hisses, "Not today." Thunder rumbles. The wind starts to smell like wet sheep and mildew. The local historian, a man who insists he once sneezed the rain away, offers a scroll that details the Great Thursday soaking of 1179. He claims a full quarter of the barley crop dissolved. Historians still argue whether that's physically possible, but the scroll includes drawings of frowning vegetables, so who's to say? It's getting darker now, not sunset dark, ominous cold soup dark. You pass a trio of girls placing moss on fence posts. They're humming. One wears a necklace made of tiny umbrellas carved from bones. Mouse bones, you think. She smiles too long when you wave. You ask an old man with one eye what the Thursday fear really is. He taps the side of his nose and says, "Rain don't fall the same on a cursed day. It slides up the stalks, confuses the wheat." You're about to laugh, but you stop yourself. The wheat field behind him looks off, not dead, just angled strangely, like it's leaning away from you. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings 4 times. That means the sky is watching. You're not supposed to chew anything crunchy after the bell. Apparently, cracking sounds provoke lightning. Dinner is soft bread and softer cheese. You chew silently. That night, you sleep in the loft above a barn. The animals downstairs all face the same direction, toward the east, where the rains come from. A pig looks up and snorts disapprovingly. As you drift off, you hear chanting, low, slow, like bees humming through a bucket. It's the rain keepers, walking the perimeter with branches dipped in vinegar. Their job is to distract the rain until Friday. At dawn, the fields are damp, but not soaked. One farmer bows to the clouds, another offers a radish skyward and whispers, "Thank you for waiting." A drizzle begins exactly 3 minutes after sunrise. The boy with the potato is back. He holds it out to you again. "It's Friday now," he says. "Safe to snack." You take the potato. It tastes like mud. You chew anyway. You wake to the sound of splashing, steady, precise, like someone ladling water into a metal pail from a great height. But when you peer through the wooden slats of the barn wall, you realize it's not raining. Not quite. It's the parish bucket brigade, already hard at work reenacting one of the village's more theatrical rain rituals. Down near the chapel's mossy well, a line of villagers passes buckets of water in solemn silence. One scoops from the well, the next pours it onto a specific patch of dirt, and the last shuffles forward 3 steps, sighs dramatically, and dumps their bucket over a wooden effigy of a goat. Rinse and repeat. Literally, you join the crowd to watch. A nearby woman explains it's called the pouring of the hope. Supposedly, if enough of the sacred well's water touches the goat effigy, it convinces the sky that they don't need rain, and, being fickle, the sky then provides it out of spite. It's classic medieval reverse psychology. The goat effigy itself is questionable. It's made of bundled hay, 2 soup ladles for horns, and what looks suspiciously like someone's underpants tied around its midsection. Children occasionally giggle, which earns them swift glares from the elder known as Sister Platia. Sister Platia is in charge of the rain rituals this month. Her credentials? She once predicted a drizzle 14 minutes before it happened. She now walks with the swagger of a retired storm goddess. As the ritual continues, you hear her shouting corrections. No, no, you pour. You don't splash. The sky knows the difference. One man sheepishly wrings out his sleeve. At the center of it all stands Father Gernwin, the parish priest. He holds a brass censer that spits out herbal smoke meant to confuse airborne water spirits. The smoke smells like damp oregano and regret. Funny detail, Father Gernwin is famously hydrophobic, not philosophically, just physically. He can't swim, won't bathe, and once refused to bless a river for fear it might retaliate. Yet here he is, waving smoke at clouds, mumbling something about rain equity. You're handed a small goat hair and told to rub it between your palms while imagining dew. It's apparently for alignment. You rub. Nothing happens, which is the intended effect. Success in this ritual is measured by a complete lack of measurable outcome. Someone sneezes, everyone flinches, a man nearby gasps, "That was a wet sneeze," and bolts toward his house. This is not uncommon. Rain rituals, you see, attract hypochondriacs. In a time when medicine mostly involved leeches and crossed fingers, weather-related rituals offered comfort, or at least an excuse to gather and whisper dramatically about humidity. The ritual ends with the ceremonial 3 drips, where a child chosen at random has to drop exactly 3 drops of water onto a thistle. Today's chosen child misses entirely. A beetle drinks the drops instead. There's a moment of stunned silence. Sister Pladia raises a fist to the sky and mutters, "So be it." The crowd nods in grim agreement. The beetle is now considered spiritually bloated. Historians still argue whether these kinds of communal rituals were born from pagan traditions or simple peasant boredom. Some believe it all traces back to ancient Roman rain games. Others say it's just what happens when your entire economy depends on soggy vegetables. After the ritual, you follow a few villagers back to their cottages. The thatched roofs drip rhythmically, not from new rain, but from condensation, a detail they interpret as a sign of nature's exhale. Inside one home, a farmer shows you his collection of preserved rainwater from good years. He insists that 1203 was the wettest and best year for turnips. You're handed a cloudy vial and asked to listen to it. You try. It sounds like damp silence. He nods. That's how you know it's real. You ask what happens if it doesn't rain by the following Thursday. His face darkens. Then we do the backup ritual, he whispers. What's that? He leans closer. We dance. You can't help but laugh a little. He does not. Apparently, the backup dance involves hopping on one foot while reciting weather-related psalms backward. It's so potent, they save it as a last resort, lest it bring a deluge. The day wears on. The sky remains indecisive. A few harmless clouds float by like lazy thoughts. Villagers glance upward with practiced wariness. A man holds a spoon out toward the horizon and declares, "Feels like mist soup." No one questions him. By late afternoon, you notice that the goat effigy has been moved. Now it sits beside the well, facing northeast. This, you're told, is the post-pour position. If it were left facing west, the sky might interpret smugness, and we can't have smug goats. Dinner that evening is a stew made of root vegetables and sky broth, which tastes like watered-down celery. You eat slowly while the townsfolk discuss tomorrow's plans, polishing weather stones, oiling the bell ropes, and adjusting a scarecrow known as the Sky Friend. Its face is a wooden spoon with eyes drawn in soot. You ask, "What does the Sky Friend do?" Someone answers, "He smiles through the rain, so we don't have to." You nod, like that makes complete sense now. That night, you lie awake, listening to faint dripping sounds. Not rain, just moisture wandering. The kind of sound that makes you feel like the walls are breathing. You remember the goat hair in your pocket. It's still there, slightly damp, like it absorbed your confusion. You drift off, wondering if the sky was watching after all, or just bored. You wake to find your shoes missing and your feet already damp. Welcome to the village of fog logic, where personal belongings relocate themselves out of politeness to the moisture. Or so the locals claim. You stumble outside, sock-footed, into a low mist that clings to your knees like needy fog children. The sun hasn't risen. It's just less dark now. An elderly man waves you over with a stick that's either a cane or a ceremonial pointer. He squints and asks, "Do you hear the whistle yet?" You assume he means the wind. Nope, he means the cloud whistler. A short while later, you're led up a grassy slope to a wooden platform that's half ladder, half optimism. On it stands a man in layers of patchwork wool and exactly one shoe. He's blowing through what appears to be a flute, carved from marrow and wrapped in string. Every few puffs, he pauses to lick his thumb and hold it to the wind. This is Henrik, the village's self-proclaimed sky summoner. No official title, just a guy who once claimed the mist responded to his sneeze. He believes, fervently, that clouds prefer G minor. And Thursdays, he says, are when the sky has ears. A small audience has gathered. You recognize Sister Platia, arms folded, skeptical but respectful. Children munch on boiled roots while watching Henrik sway and toot his flute at the empty sky. Somewhere nearby, a chicken squawks disapprovingly. After 15 minutes of blowing and gesturing, nothing happens. Then something does. A low breeze. Not quite from the east. Not quite from anywhere. Just arrival. The kind of breeze that lifts loose hair and makes you question your shirt's neckline. The villagers gasp. Henrik stops and holds his arms out like a weather saint. "It begins," he whispers. The crowd stirs. Then the breeze stops. The mist thickens slightly. A sheep sneezes. Everyone looks around in reverent confusion. Was that it? Historians still argue whether these summoning rituals were genuine attempts to influence nature or just elaborate communal therapy sessions. Either way, they seemed to work often enough to survive skepticism, but rarely enough to preserve the mystery. Henrik climbs down, triumphant. He pats you on the shoulder and says, "Your arrival changed the pressure." You try to thank him, but he's already mid-interview with a mushroom collector. That afternoon, you've joined the group preparing for the cloud observation parade. It's not really a parade, more of a slow meander with intentional glancing. Everyone walks around the perimeter of the village counterclockwise, while pointing at cloud shapes and assigning them emotional meaning. "That one looks like grief," says a woman clutching a celery stalk. "I see joy," says a man who is in fact blind in one eye. One small girl insists a particular puff resembles her cousin's guilt. No one argues. You're handed a piece of stale bread and told to offer it skyward if you feel the clouds begin to cluster. You're not sure how to identify clustering, so you raise it every now and then like a medieval antenna. Halfway through the circuit, someone yells, "Layering," and the group takes a collective breath. Layering, you learn, is when two or more types of clouds, say cumulus and cirrus, overlap in what villagers consider a sign of potential betrayal. A local rule states that if layering is spotted on a Wednesday, it counts as a Thursday omen. Today is Wednesday. The crowd begins humming. A woman throws salt over her shoulder into a puddle. A dog eats it and instantly regrets everything. Henrik reappears, dragging a sack of dried herbs, which he scatters in a spiral pattern around the goat effigy. The air now smells like rain and roasted parsley. Then a boy with too much energy grabs your arm. You have to prove it now." "Prove what?" you ask. "That you brought the wind." Suddenly you are being pushed toward the center of the gathering. Henrik, barely hiding a grin, hands you the whistle flute. You stare at it like it might bite. You must now blow. You hesitate. You blow. It makes the most pitiful sound imaginable, somewhere between a dying moth and a skeptical kazoo. The crowd holds its breath. A leaf falls from a nearby tree. Then another breeze. Small, but real. You didn't summon it. Probably. Maybe. The crowd erupts in polite awe. Someone claps once. Sister Claudia tilts her head in begrudging approval. From now on, you're referred to, semi-jokingly, as the breath bringer. Children follow you around with tiny fans, asking if they can borrow your powers. One draws you riding a cloud into battle against the sun demon. You keep the drawing. Dinner that night includes something called sky soup, which is just warm water with floating herbs and the memory of turnips. You're told it's traditionally eaten during ambiguous weather. You sip it while listening to Henrik retell the moment you whistled and summoned air. You don't correct him. Outside, the mist has thickened again. Not quite fog, not quite threat, just presence. Before bed, someone slides a small bowl of rainwater under your door. A silent thank you, perhaps, or an ominous gesture. You drink it anyway. It tastes like leaf and relief, and for now at least, the sky is calm.
You wake with the unmistakable sense that today is Thursday, and even the chickens know it. There's a heaviness in the air. Not weather exactly, but a kind of communal bracing. The villagers walk slower. They speak in half whispers. Doors open cautiously, like the sky might peek inside. You step outside and find a sign freshly posted beside the goat effigy. Thursday protocol in effect. Avoid whistling, whittling, and whimsy. The rules seem to shift weekly. Sister Platia passes by carrying 3 cabbages, all wrapped in cloth. You offer a wave. She nods with the gravity of someone transporting fragile explosives. It's a 3-cabbage day, she says. Too early to tell if it's going to be a bad Thursday. But the wind blew west last night. That's never elegant. You nod solemnly. You're not sure what it means. No one is. In the town square, the Thursday table is being prepared. It's not for eating, it's for waiting. On it are laid objects that represent humility and apology to the sky. A single damp boot, a cracked egg, 6 buttons, and a spoon with no handle. Together, these are meant to say, we expect nothing, therefore we deserve everything. Historians still argue whether these types of weather-pacifying symbols were grounded in earlier pagan harvest rites or were just invented by particularly bored grandmothers who needed somewhere to put their broken spoons. You are invited to add something. You hesitate, then place a pebble from your shoe on the table. Sister Platia observes your offering. A soul stone, she mutters. That's ambiguous. Bold, but ambiguous. You are simultaneously praised and gently judged. A bell rings 6 times. This indicates the beginning of dry hour, a full hour in which no one is allowed to mention water, clouds, or dampness of any kind. It's believed that verbal moisture invites real moisture. During dry hour, conversations become impressively vague. How's the sky? Someone asks. It's existing. Any updates from the higher blue? Mostly hovering. You catch a boy nearly saying raindrop. He claps a hand over his mouth and whispers, grain pellets, instead. At the edge of the village stands a large scarecrow dressed in old robes and a crown made of twigs. This is King No Rain, the symbolic ruler of the fields. He's only brought out on Thursdays. His expression, painted in charcoal, is a firm frown. The legend says King No Rain once defeated the Monsoon Queen by standing still for 7 hours and thinking unwelcoming thoughts. The children believe in him completely. Some adults do too, but more for tradition than theology. A few secretly call him the damp distraction. Henrik is nowhere to be seen. Rumor is he's gone to the hills to distract the cumulonimbus. You picture him waving herbs at clouds and making vague threats in falsetto. Instead, Father Gernwin is leading a new ritual. It's called the Listening Circle. Everyone sits quietly with their eyes closed and simply listens for signs. A change in breeze, a rustle of leaves, the distant betrayal of thunder. You sit too. For 10 full minutes, there's nothing. Then, a crow caws. Gasps ripple through the circle. Someone mumbles, "It begins." Someone else offers the crow half a biscuit. The crow declines, suspicious. Then, a drop. Just one. It lands on Sister Claudia's head. A pause. She looks up. "That was not a full commitment," she says. "Just a warning." The villagers scatter to their Thursday shelters. These are not homes. They're small, roofed spaces tucked between trees and buildings, constructed specifically to avoid emotional wetness. One is just an umbrella nailed to a tree. Another is a barrel with windows. You're pulled into a shelter shaped like a sideways canoe. Inside are 3 people, 2 blankets, and a loaf of emergency bread. Someone hands you a small twig. "Worry stick," they explain. "Chew it instead of panicking." You nibble politely. It tastes like tree. Outside, the drizzle begins properly. Not heavy, but committed. The kind of rain that doesn't hurt your skin, just your optimism. You listen to it patter against the leaves and the roof of the barrel across the street, where a family of 4 sing softly to distract themselves. The song has no words, just gentle hums and occasional imitations of thunder, ba-drum-dum, that make everyone giggle nervously. Then, something strange. The scarecrow falls over. Instant silence. You peek out. King No Rain lies face down in the mud. A goose walks past him like nothing happened. Sister Claudia rushes forward and sets him upright again. She whispers something to him. Maybe an apology. Maybe a plea. No one hears. Dinner is canceled. On Thursdays, when rain is confirmed, the community fasts in symbolic solidarity with the fields. The idea is, if the wheat must endure water without nourishment, so must we. You eat a piece of dry turnip in secret. It squeaks in your mouth. As the evening dims, the clouds linger, not pouring, but certainly not leaving. The goat effigy is now half sunk in mud. One of the buttons from the apology table has floated away. The villagers light small lanterns and hang them from trees. Not for light, but as sky negotiators. Tiny glows to signal to the heavens. We see you, but we do not challenge you. The final act of the day is the night watch walk. Everyone walks quietly around the village once, without speaking, shoes squelching in soft dirt. It's said that silence lulls the rain into forgetfulness. You walk too, feeling the weight of the wet air, the watchful sky, and the strange reverence of a place that never takes weather for granted. Back in the loft, someone's placed a note near your bed. You did well. The pebble helped? Maybe. P. You smile, tuck the note under your pillow, and listen as the last few drops tap lightly on the roof, like a sky that's done scolding for now. You wake on Friday and immediately notice 3 things. The air is crisp, your shoes have returned, still damp but nobly present, and the wheat in the distance is leaning correctly again. Or at least it looks slightly less offended. The villagers are in noticeably better spirits. Thursday has passed, the drizzle has stopped, and it's wheat smiling day. A term no one fully explains, but which involves cheerful nodding and small offerings of jam to the soil. You're invited to join a group heading to Druid's Hill, a grassy mound just beyond the barley fields. They tell you this is where the Whispering Stones live. It sounds ominous. It's not. When you arrive, you find a modest ring of knee-high stones, each with a faint groove worn down the center. They are gray, crumbly, and probably weigh less than a determined goat. Still, they're treated with great seriousness. The custom is to place both hands on a stone and exhale your harvest intention. One woman requests better cabbage flavor. A man wishes for fewer weevils. A child just says, less mud. You try it. You wish somewhat selfishly for a clean blanket. A gentle breeze passes through the ring as if to say, noted. An old man named Garen takes the lead. He's the local stone speaker, or, as he insists, senior whisper interpreter. He wears 3 scarves and no shoes, which he claims keeps him grounded emotionally and literally. Garen believes the stones amplify spoken hope and conduct it into the roots of the nearby barley. He demonstrates by placing a piece of chalk on one stone and chanting, "Grow strong, bend soft, taste sweet." The chalk vibrates, slightly, possibly due to wind. He bows deeply anyway. You're handed a ribbon and instructed to tie it to the listening tree, which is just a particularly upright tree near the hill that supposedly eavesdrops on the clouds. The ribbons are bright, mostly frayed, and tied at every angle. One even has a small spoon attached. No one touches the spoon. It's her spoon, they say. No further explanation. Historians still argue whether these kinds of nature communication practices had actual pre-Christian roots, or were simply the rural equivalent of journaling with moss. Either way, they gave people something to focus on besides their unpredictable vegetables. Garen begins the wind chant, which sounds less like a song and more like a yawn caught in a gust. Everyone joins in. You hum along, feeling faintly ridiculous, but also oddly soothed. Then the barley responds, or rather, it sways, but in perfect rhythm with the chant. Coincidence? Probably. Maybe. Garen lifts his arms and proclaims, "The field hears us." Someone behind you sneezes. The moment passes. After the ritual, a picnic breaks out. You're handed a scone shaped like a cloud and a small jar labeled sky honey. It's sweet and slightly salty, like the air after rain. Children play Chase the Breeze, a game involving invisible wind spirits and a lot of spinning. One girl, giggling, points at the sky and shouts, "It smiled!" Everyone laughs like it's not entirely a joke. Then Henrik reappears, back from the hills. His cloak is covered in twigs, and he smells like lemon balm and mischief. "I've diverted a drizzle," he says casually. "Shouldn't hit us for 2 more days." No one questions the logic. He's treated to extra cheese at lunch. As the sun begins to dip, Garen tells you a story. Once a man refused to chant, said it was nonsense. That year, his carrots grew in a circle and whispered insults at night. Everyone nods. You're not sure how metaphorical it is. Later, as dusk stretches across the horizon, the villagers gather for a simple ceremony called Field Thanks. Each person takes a turn bowing to the crops, not praying, just acknowledging. You join them. When it's your turn, you face the barley, bow gently and whisper, "Thanks for not drowning." A soft wind ruffles the tops of the stalks. You tell yourself it's just coincidence. Maybe. Night falls. Lanterns are lit in the village again. Not for fear this time, but for celebration. The fields are alive. The sky is silent. And Friday carries no threats. Back in the barn loft, someone has left a folded cloth on your bed. Clean. Warm. Smells faintly of lavender and soot. A note attached reads, "You wished. The stones listened. Don't waste it." G. You smile and wrap yourself in the blanket, the hum of the wind chant still faint in your ears. Outside, the stars peek out between clouds that no longer glare. The wheat no longer leans away, and the sky, for now, is listening kindly. You wake to music, not the kind with the instruments or melodies, more like pots clinking rhythmically, and someone shouting about umbrellas of arrogance. It's the feast of not rain, and today the village is celebrating the days when the sky didn't try to ruin their turnips. There's a banner strung across the square that reads, "Thank you for nothing, sky." A second banner reads, "Accept the good kinds of nothing." You are pulled into the festivities almost immediately. A woman with flour on her cheeks and purpose in her stride hands you a wooden bowl of something called cloud cake. It's mostly egg, less mostly sugar, and entirely lopsided. She grins. It's how the air tastes when it behaves. The celebration takes place in 3 parts: a parade of umbrellas, a sky toast, and the burning of the weather vane. You're not sure how serious this is, but no one seems concerned. The umbrella parade is first. Everyone marches through the village holding upside-down umbrellas decorated with twigs, feathers, and written messages like "Stay aloft" and "Don't even think about it." One has a drawing of a smug-looking sun giving a thumbs up. You're handed an umbrella that's already a bit damp. You ask if that's okay. "Oh, that one?" a girl says. "That's the one." You don't ask what she means. You simply walk. The villagers chant a simple rhyme. "Sky above, don't interrupt." We like it dry, smooth, and abrupt. Historians still argue whether this festival had its roots in any real agricultural pattern, or whether it was invented after a particularly cheerful dry spell in 1283. Most agree it was likely sparked by the event locals call the Great Umbrella Incident. And yes, eventually someone brings it up. During the second round of cakes, old Garen sits down next to you and gestures to the crowd. "You see them smiling?" he says. They weren't smiling in 1283. He sips from a mug of dew tea, a drink made from boiled condensation scraped off the chapel windows. It's shockingly good. Garen leans in. There was this one man, Borton, thought he was clever, built an umbrella, a real one, sturdy frame, cloth stretched tight, took it into the field on a Thursday. You almost spit your tea. He called it his sun shield, used it every day, said it was smart, said it was practical, said the sky had no feelings. You already know this didn't end well. On the 7th day, Garen continues, it rained for 17 hours, sideways, wasn't even cloudy, just rain, furious, coordinated rain. The story goes that Borton's fields turned to soup, his goats refused to leave the barn, and his umbrella was stolen by a wind so specific, it was later named the Borton Draft. Now, each year, the village reenacts the parade, but with a twist. All umbrellas must be absurd, fragile, or clearly incapable of real function. The idea is to mock Borton's hubris and remind the sky that humans no longer challenge its authority. A man walks by with a parasol made entirely of cabbage leaves. Another carries a fishing net tied to a hula hoop. A child waves what might be an upside-down birdhouse on a stick. You find yourself laughing, really laughing, for the first time since arriving. The absurdity is joyful, intentional silliness wrapped around ancient reverence. It's like the village knows how ridiculous it all is, and chooses to love it anyway. Next comes the sky toast. Everyone gathers around the apology table, which today has been converted into a snack bar, and raises their drinks. Dew tea, cloud wine, or air ale, which tastes like watery yeast and hope. They speak in unison, to the space above our heads, to the clouds that sometimes spare us, to the winds that mind their manners, and to the rains that nap when asked. You drink. It tastes ceremonial. Then, the burning. A small decorative weather vane is brought forward. Not a real one, just a symbolic wooden thing shaped like a chicken and painted to look surprised. They set it in the middle of the square and light it with a smoldering branch taken from the cooking fire. As it burns, the villagers hum a minor key melody. It has no words, but the tone is clear. Humble gratitude, respect, and maybe a touch of theatrical guilt. The flames catch slowly. The painted chicken peels away. A brief breeze passes through, lifting ashes upward. Everyone watches in silence. Henrik appears beside you. "There goes the forecast," he says with a wink. Later, the children play a game called Catch the Breeze, which involves chasing invisible weather spirits with wooden ladles. No one wins, but that's the point. Dinner is served outside, a stew called gratitude broth. It contains root vegetables, wild garlic, and sky water, rain collected from an approved container that was blessed by Father Gernwin and confirmed emotionally dry by Sister Pladia. You sip it with caution. It's earthy, rich, and tastes faintly like a sigh of relief. After the meal, stories are told. One farmer swears she once heard the clouds whisper a compliment about her carrots. Another claims to have seen a thunderbolt pause mid-air to admire a thatched roof. The final tale is told by a child who insists that last year during the sky toast, a patch of fog danced. No one laughs at her. They just nod and smile. Back in the barn, your new blanket is warm. The air is still, and the only sound is a distant flute playing to the wind. You fall asleep thinking maybe the sky really does have feelings, or at the very least, an opinion. You wake to a thunderous splash, not from the sky, but from a wooden bucket being upturned directly outside your window. "Trial run," someone shouts, followed by the unmistakable sound of goats objecting. It's Saturday, and today belongs to the Toads, Bells, and Sudden Downpours Committee. You step outside cautiously, avoiding a puddle that may or may not have been placed intentionally. The villagers are darting between structures with ropes, bells, and small wicker cages. You ask what's going on, and someone simply replies, "They're checking the toads." You blink. "Why?" She stares at you like you've asked why the sun rises. Toads are rain's messengers, and sometimes it's spies. As it turns out, the village keeps an official toad count. Too few toads in the morning, a drizzle. Too many hopping at once, downpour. No toads at all, either a drought or a toad conspiracy. The middle ground is ideal. 3 to 7, preferably sluggish. A young boy runs up carrying a large gurgling toad in both hands. "He blinked at me twice," he shouts. Sister Pladia appears, inspects the toad, and nods. "Mild mist, midday," she proclaims. The crowd murmurs approval. This isn't science, but it is certainty. The bells, meanwhile, are part of the air clarification process. Hung in doorways, trees, and at the tips of long poles, they chime gently whenever the wind passes. The idea is that the sound purifies airborne moisture and reminds it of manners. Father Gernwin leads the bell blessing ritual. He wears a vestment covered in stitched clouds, with tiny bells sewn into the hem. As he walks, he jingles like an anxious sheep. Children follow behind with twine, tying extra bells wherever they can reach. A dog now jingles too. You're given a bell and told to hang it somewhere where sky and ground might disagree. You choose the corner of the goat shelter. The goat gives you a meaningful look. You don't ask. Henrik, of course, is performing his own version of the ritual. He stands on one leg atop a barrel, spinning slowly while holding 2 toads and humming in F sharp. You ask why. "Balance," he says. Toads don't respect imbalance. It's hard to argue. The highlight of the day is the downpour drill, a village-wide performance simulating what to do if the sky suddenly forgets its boundaries. A horn is blown, twice if it's a pretend drizzle, 3 times for an imaginary storm. Today, it's 3. Panic ensues, very politely. Villagers sprint to assigned shelters, throw cloaks over scarecrows, and flip all the apology table items upside down. A man loudly recites a poem about humility. Someone else rolls a turnip into the well to distract the clouds. You're directed to a barrel labeled Storm Refuge, capacity 1 to 2. You climb in. It smells like vinegar and thyme. Inside, a woman whispers, "The thunder doesn't like to be noticed." You nod as if you've always known this. Outside, you hear laughter and the shuffle of coordinated chaos. The rain never comes. It's not meant to. But the villagers emerge afterward looking triumphant. "Excellent containment," says Sister Plaudia. "Only 3 damp socks and 1 startled duck." As the sun stretches into afternoon, the toads are counted again. 8. A bit risky. A meeting is held. After 15 minutes of serious discussion, it's decided that the 8th toad is just visiting. A small passport is drawn in chalk. Tensions ease. Historians still argue whether these toad-based forecasts had any basis in observable patterns, or if they were simply a convenient scapegoat, literally, for unexpected drizzle. But in this village, the toads have agency, names, and in one case, a birthday. Dinner includes toad-free stew, which is not what it sounds like. It's just a name to honor the absence of interruption. The stew itself is made from lentils, leek, and a touch of weather seasoning, which you suspect is just ash and enthusiasm. As night falls, the bells continue their soft chorus in the breeze. You sit by a fire with Henrik, who's drying his toads near the embers like socks. He hums to them and nods approvingly as they blink slowly. "They know," he says. "Know what?" "That tomorrow the clouds will hesitate." You glance at the sky, clear, quiet, watchful. You smile. In this place, hesitation is a gift. You wake to silence. Not absence of sound silence, but the thick, woolly kind that settles when something is waiting. No wind, no rustling, not even a goat sigh. You sit up slowly, brushing straw from your hair, and listen. Still nothing. The villagers call this listening day. It happens only once every few months, usually after an unusually quiet dawn. According to tradition, this is when the sky stops broadcasting and starts receiving. Every noise is considered a potential offense. Even sneezes are rationed. You step carefully outside. The ground is damp, but not soggy. A pear has fallen perfectly upright in the grass, and no one has touched it. It's now a listening offering. A small procession winds toward the old monastery near the edge of the village. You follow, bare footsteps echoing in the wet grass. Inside the monastery, candles flicker beneath the stained glass windows that depict clouds with eyes. The central figure is Sant Umbrelta, she who held her tongue. Her statue is made of driftwood, always damp, and always frowning slightly. At the front of the chapel, a large book is opened, the monk's weather diary. Its pages are swollen with age and humidity. Each entry is handwritten in a cramped, apologetic script. Father Gernwin reads from it slowly, reverently. Thursday. It began without promise. Fog drank the barley. Prayers were mumbled. One goose left in protest. Evening brought a dry crack of wind. We lit candles and whispered, perhaps. No rain. Each entry is like this. Emotionally soggy prose interspersed with weather updates. One entry merely reads, wet. Again. Regret soup for lunch. You're invited to flip through the diary. You spot the record from the year 1271, infamous in local lore. Thunder argued with lightning. Crops offended. Village remorseful. Declared 3 days of hush. no rain, some inner peace. Historians still argue whether this diary reflects genuine meteorological observation or simply the mental unraveling of monks forced to live next to thunder for 20 years. Either way, it's beautiful in its drippy despair. Outside, the villagers scatter to their homes or to quiet corners of the fields. No work is done on listening day. The idea is to be as acoustically small as possible. Children are taught to walk with cloud feet, toes first, no slap. You're given a pair of soft shoes, woven slippers padded with moss. They squish gently with every step. Someone hands you a folded cloth with a whisper for covering opinions. You spend part of the day walking the edge of the barley fields with Garin. He points out plants that lean inward, explaining that these are listeners. He kneels and murmurs a phrase to one, then gestures for you to do the same. You do. The barley does not respond. "That's good," he whispers. "Means it's listening." You nod solemnly. So does the barley. Probably. A bell doesn't ring at noon. On purpose. Instead, Father Gernwin opens a small secret box containing what he calls the mute chime, a bell made of wax and thread. He raises it ceremonially, shakes it once, and nothing happens. Everyone sighs in relief. Lunch is eaten in silence. You sit with Sister Pladia under a tree. She breaks bread and offers you a slice. No words, just a glance that says, "This is the driest loaf I could find." You're welcome. Even Henrik is quiet today. He sits cross-legged near the listening tree, eyes closed, holding a small flute in his lap. Not playing it, just holding. When a breeze passes, he smiles. In the afternoon, the villagers write their thoughts on leaves. These are called cloud notes, meant for the sky to read later. Some are prayers, some are complaints. One simply says, "Please less worm." You're handed a leaf and a charcoal stub. You think for a moment, then write, "Thank you for waiting. We see you." You place it in the stream where other leaves drift slowly. The stream is silent too. Somehow, even its bubbles feel discreet. As dusk approaches, the stillness deepens. At twilight, a final gathering forms around the stone circle. Garin holds up a mirror and tilts it skyward. "This is our silence," he says softly. "Reflected, received, remembered." He places the mirror on the grass and walks away. No one speaks. You sit with the others, watching the clouds float without purpose. Eventually, the stars begin to emerge, one by one. No fanfare. The villagers drift home like mist withdrawing. Before bed, you find a note beneath your blanket. It reads, "The sky heard you. It left a whisper in the rafters." You look up, only silence. The kind that feels like an answer. You wake to incense. Not the gentle kind, but the aggressive, nose-invading sort that smells like cinnamon's angry cousin, mixed with desperate sage. The air is thick with smoke, bells are ringing, and someone is yelling about Stratus betrayal. Welcome to the Archbishop's anti-cloud campaign. You step outside to find the village square transformed. Banners hang from the rooftops bearing stern phrases like, "Begone, O soggy ones," and "We demand dry rights." There's a makeshift pulpit where none existed before, and standing atop it is a tall, broad-shouldered man in full ecclesiastical robes lined with what appears to be sheep fleece and sun-dried lemon peels. This is Archbishop Aldrich, on one of his rare visits from the distant city. He has come, he declares, to drive the clouds away once and for all. His solution? Holy incense, loud scroll readings, and volume, lots of volume. He points toward the sky and shouts, "Return to thy vaporous origins." You're handed a pamphlet titled, 7 sins of condensation. Among them, looming, hovering, moisture without consent. You blink. Sister Claudia stands nearby, arms folded, unimpressed. He does this every few years. Claims he can banish the weather. Last time he just gave 3 cows asthma. The Archbishop raises a large scroll, unfurls it with dramatic flair, and begins reading aloud from the Book of Climatic Chastening, Chapter 5. Thou shalt not cluster above righteous lands, nor drip upon the diligent. The villagers try to look respectful, but many are hiding yawns. Henrik hums under his breath. Garen draws a frowning cloud in the dirt with a stick. The Archbishop orders a processional march around the village perimeter. Each participant carries a staff tipped with sun-shaped ornaments. You are handed one that jingles faintly. As the procession begins, he leads chants like "No more mist" and "Drizzle is devil's dandruff," which echo awkwardly off the damp hills. At one point, he stops and attempts to exorcise a particularly suspicious cumulus cloud with a combination of Latin, stern eye contact, and a brass cone that emits high-pitched whines. The cloud does not react. Historians still argue, Garen whispers to you, whether Aldrich's campaign ever accomplished anything beyond minor allergic reactions and a temporary shortage of oregano. But to be fair, in the year 1301, one of Aldrich's visits did coincide with a sudden clearing of skies and a 2-day rainbow. He's been riding that success ever since. Back in the square, he launches the day's centerpiece, the Scroll of Dry Benedictions. It's 20 feet long. As he reads, assistants throw handfuls of baked barley into the air like confetti. One pigeon becomes deeply confused and refuses to leave. The crowd grows restless, especially when Aldrich begins threatening thunder sympathizers. Sister Claudia sighs so loudly, a nearby bell rings. Suddenly, it does start to drizzle. Light, mocking, very punctual. A collective groan ripples through the village. The Archbishop doubles down, yelling louder. "I am not finished," he booms, shaking his incense censer so hard it flies off and hits a goose. The goose naturally retaliates. A chase ensues. While Aldrich flees the avenging goose, robe flapping, scroll dragging, the villagers start packing up the banners. Garen shrugs. It's always a goose, in the end. You find yourself helping take down the pulpit, which was made mostly of storage crates and ambition. A boy offers you a roasted turnip in consolation. "Rain's not mad," he says, "just bored." By mid-afternoon, the drizzle stops. Henrik climbs onto a hay bale and loudly thanks the sky for its restraint. The Archbishop returns, slightly ruffled, now claiming the event was a test of faith and the rain was a demonic illusion. No one challenges him, but they do begin setting up for dinner. Tonight's meal is themed Irritated Heaven Stew. It contains everything that didn't grow well this week, plus a hint of sarcasm. It's surprisingly tasty. At dusk, Aldrich gives a final speech. It's quieter, almost reflective. He ends with, "Let us pray not for dry days, but for wisdom in wet ones." Everyone applauds politely. He departs on a horse named Clement, leaving a faint trail of sandalwood and goat regret behind him. You walk through the fields alone, watching the sky, which now looks innocent as ever. Clouds drift lazily, not plodding, just drifting. Back at the barn, a new note waits for you. Some shout, some whisper. The sky listens mostly to those who hum. P. You lie down, wrap yourself in your lavender blanket, and listen to the wind brushing past the beams. Calm, curious, unbothered. It didn't leave. It just wanted a better welcome. You wake to a soft rumble. Not thunder exactly, but something more like a sky-sized stomach growl. The villagers say that's how you know the clouds are thinking. It's tax day, but not for people. Today is rain tax day, when the sky is symbolically billed for its interruptions, and thunder is fined for its attitude. The whole event is led by Bertha, the village's only registered sky accountant. She wears a robe made of stitched parchments and carries a large abacus that clicks ominously. At the center of the village square stands a tall wooden board labeled Precipitation Penalties and Atmospheric Fees. A few examples: unscheduled drizzle, 3 carat credits; excessive mud, 1 goat apology; thunder after bedtime, public shaming of a cloud doll, unlicensed puddles, immediate relocation to designated splash zones. You are handed a form titled Complaint Against the Sky and asked to list any grievances from the past moon cycle. You write 1 wet sock, 2 emotional breezes, 1 startled nap. Bertha nods gravely and files it under mild inconveniences, Tier 2. The village has a surprisingly elaborate bureaucracy for weather-related offenses. A boy reads out last year's sky violations: 12 soggy loaves, 2 jealous rainbows, and 1 time it rained up. That last one is still under investigation. Sister Plaudia arrives with a basket of writs of moisture, old documents written on onion skin paper accusing various weather conditions of misbehavior. Most are addressed simply to the Big Blue. Today's ceremony involves a series of symbolic invoicings. Villagers take turns approaching a large ledger and stamping it with handmade cloud seals. The ledger is then hoisted skyward by a kite and allowed to float freely until it is seen. The kite doesn't go far, but it tries. Henrik leads a quiet protest against thunder. He claims thunder overstepped its role during the last week's drizzle by being needlessly performative. He carries a small thunder effigy made of hollow gourd and goat whiskers. It rattles when he shakes it. Nearby, a mock courtroom is set up. 1 stool, 1 carrot as gavel, and a poster board with a sketch of a guilty-looking cumulonimbus. A child plays the role of sky prosecutor and dramatically accuses the clouds of deliberate sogification. The clouds, of course, say nothing. Historians still argue whether these weather taxes ever coincided with actual climate shifts, or whether the record-keeping was more therapeutic than meteorological. Some claim a particularly scathing cloud poem in 1249 did precede a 5-day clearing, but others say that was just a lucky insult. After lunch, barley bread and something called sun butter, the villagers gather for the reading of fines. These are not real, but symbolic charges levied on behalf of the village for past atmospheric misconduct. This year's verdict: 17 excess droplets, 2 days of suspicious fog, 1 unexplained rainbow misalignment. Total fine: 3 squashes and a weather-neutral haiku. Garen recites the haiku on a hilltop. Clouds drift without care. Our boots speak in muddy tongues, but still we forgive. Everyone nods respectfully. Bertha then buries a small pouch of dried peas in the field as payment. Not for the sky, she explains, for balance. The sky doesn't take bribes, but it likes gestures. As evening sets in, the clouds remain neutral, present but aloof. No rain, no thunder, no invoices returned marked paid, but the village feels lighter. At dinner, someone mentions that this year's puddle counts are already down. Perhaps the kite ledger worked. You help clean up the parchment scraps and thunder effigies. Henrik plays a slow tune on his spoon flute, and Bertha hums in harmony, a rare thing. You find yourself laughing with Sister Plaudia, who jokes, "If the sky ever pays us back, it better include interest, preferably in dry socks." Back in your loft, another note waits. You charge the sky. That's brave. Or foolish. Same difference. G. You smile and stretch beneath your now familiar blanket. Outside, you hear one soft rumble in the distance. Not a threat, just a receipt being filed. You wake to a village that smells like regret. Not dramatic regret, just a mild, simmered kind. The kind you feel after pouring too much salt into soup and serving it anyway. Today's mood is damp, quiet, and riddled with glances exchanged over unfinished chores. It's the aftermath of the town that prayed too hard. You're told that a nearby village, Bramblecroft, held a massive rain prayer ceremony 3 days ago. It worked. Too well. 14 days of drizzle, mutters Garen, shaking his head over a soggy basket of carrots. Even the cabbages quit growing out of protest. You're invited to visit. Apparently, it's customary to bring a gift of silence and something absorbent. You bring a sponge and a piece of unbuttered bread. The road to Bramblecroft is half mud, half path. Along the way, you pass signs hand-painted on shingles. We apologize for the damp. Closed until drier spirits return. Don't pray too hard. We did. As you enter the village, it's clear things are squishy. Shoes squelch. Thatched roofs glisten with indifference. Even the goats look mildly betrayed. You meet Elder Marn, a woman wrapped in 7 scarves and carrying an umbrella fashioned from bread crusts and strong opinions. She leads you to the central square, where a puddle has been named the Consequence. It's cordoned off with twine and carries a handwritten label, Persistent Emotional Moisture. Elder Marn explains the ritual. 3 nights ago, the entire village gathered and sang the ancient Summon of Soak chant. They danced, burned 5 herbs, and offered the sky an entire wheel of cheese. It was supposed to just freshen the air, she says, voice damp with embarrassment. Instead, it rained within 20 minutes, then again at dawn, and then continuously. Henrik, who tagged along out of morbid curiosity, sniffs the air. Oh yes, he says. That's over prayer. You can always tell. Has a basily despair. The villagers have responded in various ways. Some have constructed personal rain shelters from bathtubs. Others have started drying herbs upside down while humming disapproval toward the clouds. One woman sits in the square knitting a scarf and muttering, "Never again. Not until at least equinox." You tour the shrine of balanced weather, a small hut with exactly 1 candle and a stack of damp napkins. Inside is a sign, Prayer Moderation Zone. Maximum, 2 hopes per day. You light the candle anyway, not for rain, just for balance. Historians still argue whether communities like Bramblecroft ever suffered real consequences from overzealous weather ceremonies, or whether these tales evolved from shared rural anxiety and waterlogged vegetables. Still, the villagers believe. And belief here is thick as the puddles. Before you leave, you're gifted a small amulet, a dried pea wrapped in cloth, for restraint. Elder Marn says, in case you ever feel too enthusiastic. The walk back to your village is sunny, almost suspiciously so. Henrik spins his spoon flute idly and hums a tune he calls Clouds with Regret. As you return, Sister Plaudia is waiting. Did they survive their drizzle enlightenment? She asks. Barely, you say. They invented bread umbrellas. She raises an eyebrow, then chuckles. Dinner that night is humbled stew, mostly root vegetables, and something described only as atmospheric caution. It's served lukewarm, intentionally, to avoid offending the steam, During the meal, villagers quietly share stories of the last time they prayed too hard. One man recalls asking for a bit of breeze, only to lose his roof. A woman wished for sunshine on laundry day. She got it, but also a sunburned duck. As night falls, a single lantern is lit in the square and placed beside the goat effigy. A note is attached. Not today, maybe soon. We're ready-ish. Back in the loft, your blanket smells faintly of thyme and dry pages. Another note has been tucked beneath your pillow. The sky gives, but it never forgets who asked too loudly. P. You sleep with windows cracked and hope whispered gently, never shouted. And somewhere beyond the hills, Bramblecroft tiptoes into another cautious morning. You wake to a sound that is neither song nor scream. It's the unmistakable, riveting chaos of a frog choir gone rogue. Today is Cabbage Moon night, and the frogs have opinions. You step outside into a scene that looks like a dress rehearsal for either a play or a misunderstanding. Lanterns sway from poles, villagers wear headbands woven with cabbage leaves, and softly chant lines like, "May the roots rise calmly." But the frogs? They didn't get the memo. Every patch of water, every pond, ditch, and particularly stubborn puddle is alive with croaking. Loud, overlapping, out-of-rhythm croaking. They were supposed to harmonize, says Garen, holding a large gourd as though it's a newborn secret. But they've gone interpretive. Henrik approaches wearing a full cabbage on his head like a helmet. They sense the imbalance, he says dramatically. Probably the onion's fault. You learn that Cabbage Moon Night is an annual event timed to a specific lunar alignment when the moonlight is said to bless leafy crops, particularly cabbages, with clarity and emotional resilience. The ritual involves chants, reflective leaf polishing, and frog inclusion. Yes, frog inclusion. They were meant to accompany us, says Sister Plaudia, visibly annoyed. Not upstage us. According to lore, the croaks are supposed to mimic the sounds of growing roots. Gentle, grounding, slow. But this year, it sounds like the frogs are hosting a thunderstorm-themed opera. Still, the villagers persist. The central ceremony takes place in the southern field, under full moonlight. The cabbage circle is already formed. 32 leafy heads arranged in a spiral pattern, each sprinkled with dew and facing slightly northeast for optimal lunar reception. You're asked to walk the spiral path barefoot, carrying a single clove of garlic wrapped in a beet leaf. Symbol of purity and pungent wisdom, whispers a girl solemnly. Halfway through the spiral, you are stopped by a toad, not part of the official frog choir, but clearly a critic. It stares, unimpressed, then hops onto a cabbage and declares ownership by proximity. Garen steps in with the gourd, produces a small tuning fork, and dings it gently. Miraculously, a moment of harmony arises. Just for a breath, the frogs pause. The villagers pause. Even the wind holds its breath. Then a goose sneezes. The frogs erupt once more. Historians still argue whether the frog choirs of medieval Europe were actual coordinated rituals or just a polite excuse for a nighttime noise. Some claim the frogs were trained. Others say the villagers simply had too much free time and a need for narrative. Either way, the chaos tonight is legendary. Henrik attempts a solo. He sings an old moon verse in a key he calls root minor. The frogs answer by getting louder. Sister Plaudia gives up, lights a ceremonial turnip, and mutters, "May the cabbages interpret this mess however they see fit." Eventually, the villagers begin their final act of the night, moon offering soup. This isn't eaten. It's a symbolic brew, poured into the soil to connect nourishment with sky blessing. The ingredients are carefully chosen. Moonlit water collected in reflective bowls, 3 cabbage shavings, 1 sliver of clean bark, a frog feather, which is a lie, they use moss. You help stir. The pot smells faintly of wet parchment and overpromised vegetable stock. As the moon reaches its highest point, the soup is gently ladled into hollows around the spiral. The frogs continue, unabated. Then it happens. A breeze. A real one. Not just air, but intention. It swirls through the spiral, rustling the cabbage leaves, lifting a ribbon from someone's hair, and the frogs stop. All of them. In perfect, frog-shaped silence. You could hear a beet leaf drop. One last croak echoes, lone and defiant. And then stillness. Garen lifts the gourd like a sacred relic. "It is done," he whispers. "May our leaves grow unconfused." The villagers exhale. No applause, just satisfaction. Dinner tonight is called Lunar Gratitude Mash. Cabbage, of course, with a hint of mint and onion apology. The frogs stay outside, presumably discussing their next performance. Before bed, you find a leaf under your blanket with a tiny note pinned to it. The loudest voices fade fastest. Even frogs know that. P. You lie down, feet still dusty from the spiral, heart full of something unnamed. And somewhere outside, one frog croaks once, as if to say, "Good night." You wake to the sound of a roof sighing. Not creaking, sighing. A long, low groan of moisture settling into wood, of beams questioning their purpose. It's been raining for days, and now everything, from barns to boots, has adopted the personality of a soaked sock. Welcome to the time known simply as when the sky forgot to stop. Even the goats look soggy. One stares at you as if to say, "You did this." Henrik meets you at the door, cloaked in 2 cloaks and wearing wooden clogs that squelch with philosophical defeat. "It's the sky's nap that went too deep," he says solemnly. "It dreamed of oceans and forgot to wake." The village is half flooded, but no one is surprised. This happens once every generation. When a drizzle becomes a downpour, then becomes a saga. The villagers have stopped measuring rainfall. Instead, they use phrases like knee-deep and rising, bucket-worthy, or bring the goats upstairs. Garen shows you his rain log, a plank marked with notches recording rainfall height over the last 11 days. The latest mark is labeled troubling. The one above it simply reads, soup. To cope, the villagers have created the water routine, a series of rituals and survival habits that keep spirits high and moss off the windowsills. You are assigned a task, bail duty. Armed with a ladle and a hopeful bucket, you scoop water from one end of the barn to the other. It's a symbolic act. The bucket has a hole in it. Everyone knows. No one mentions it. The main complaint, surprisingly, isn't the flooding. It's the legal dispute with the clouds. Yes, the villagers are suing the sky, Garen explains as he hands you a mug of warm root tea. Back in 1192, we drafted a weather agreement. 1 mist per fortnight, 1 moderate thunder per equinox. This, he gestures broadly to the soggy horizon, is clearly a breach. The document, written in charcoal on treated parchment, is framed above the bread shelf in the town hall. It's signed by 20 villagers and 1 smudged thumbprint labeled probably a goose. Henrik has written a cease and desist letter addressed to cloud entities and or associated breezes. It reads, "To whom it may concern, kindly unweigh your tears upon our vegetables. We have learned, we have knelt, we are now wrinkled beyond patience. Yours in hope and mildew." the ever-soggy citizens of Clayus Bend. Historians still argue whether these kinds of weather-based legal performances were satire, sincere, or a coping mechanism. Evidence suggests it was all three. A trial is held in the village square. Sister Platia presides as judge, wearing a cloak of waxed cloth and a hat made from a funnel. A large gray sponge represents the accused. It is placed on a chair and glared at meaningfully. The prosecution, led by Bertha the Sky Accountant, reads aloud a list of charges: unscheduled saturation, repeated droplet assaults, emotional flooding of radishes, public dampness without permit. Henrik serves as defense. His argument? Maybe we needed this. The sponge remains silent. After a brief recess, during which tea is served and a duck is sworn in as an impartial witness, Sister Platia renders her verdict. We forgive, but we don't forget. The sky owes us 17 dry days, effective immediately, and one apology rainbow. The court adjourns. Outside, the rain slows, just slightly. Coincidence? Maybe. But villagers begin whispering, "The sponge heard us." You return to your loft that night to find your bed slightly damp. Not soaked, not unpleasant, just enough to remind you where you are. A note waits for you, pressed between two dry crackers. Even storms listen when the story is good enough. G. You fall asleep to the sound of dripping that now feels rhythmic, rehearsed, like the sky tapping a message on the roof. Still here, but listening. You wake before dawn, not to rain, but to stillness. A strange stretched hush has wrapped the village. It's not dry, but it's not dripping either. The sky feels paused, like it's standing just out of sight, waiting for someone to make the next move. Today is the day of the Thursday stones. You've heard whispers all week. An old altar, an underground chamber, stones that only listen on odd-numbered months. Naturally, it's all a bit theatrical, but in this village, that just means it's important. You're led by lantern light beyond the fields, through a dense copse of trees with bark like flaking parchment. Garen walks ahead, holding a walking stick carved with spirals. Henrik trails behind, softly humming something in 3/4 time. Sister Platia has the key. Yes, a key. The Thursday stones are kept beneath an old root cellar sealed with a moss-covered iron door. Few are allowed down at once. You're told this isn't superstition. It's airflow. Inside, the chamber is cool, damp, and oddly symmetrical. 16 stones form a circle, each about the size of a barrel. They shimmer faintly, not with light, but with a stubborn dampness of stone that refuses to dry. In the center, a shallow basin, always filled with water. No one adds it. It just stays. Henrik leans in and whispers, "They say this is where the first Thursday was forgiven." You're not sure what that means. The ritual begins. Everyone sits cross-legged around the stones. A candle is lit in the basin. It floats somehow. Garen begins speaking, his voice echoing strangely off the curved walls. "This is the reckoning of the week," he says, "the part where time bends inward and memory becomes climate." You're handed a smooth stone and instructed to place it into the basin while silently naming a moment you wish had landed softer. The idea is that the stones, having endured centuries of forgotten rain and muffled footsteps, know how to carry things quietly. You place your stone, the water ripples. Just once. One villager begins a chant, not words, just tone. Others join, creating a low, circular hum that reverberates in your chest. It's the kind of sound that feels ancient and personal, even if you don't know the tune. Then comes the balancing. Each person stands, approaches a stone, and tries to balance a small item on top, usually a button, a pebble, or a dry leaf. The symbolism is simple: stillness within weight, poise within pressure. You balance a single seed. It wobbles, then settles. Sister Platia nods once. The weak forgives you. That's all she says. Historians still argue whether the Thursday stones were part of a broader pre-Christian ritual calendar, or simply the remnants of a time when people needed one day to admit they didn't know anything at all. Because here's the thing. In this village, Thursday isn't just another square on the calendar. It's a pause, a breath, a day that looks back at you and asks, "Are you sure?" Once the ceremony ends, the group exits silently. Outside, the air feels lighter, even if your cloak clings a little at the sleeves. Garen places a stone at the entrance, a temporary seal, and says, "It listens better when we leave it alone." Breakfast is quiet but content. Porridge with hope seeds. They're just chia, but no one calls them that here. A slice of sourdough with what they claim is moon-cured butter. You don't question it. Henrik spends the morning rebuilding the apology table. He adds a new item, a single sock, still damp from last week. "For partial regrets," he says. The rest of the day is slow. People move with the careful pace of those who've just remembered that time doesn't owe them anything. You walk the fields and find that the barley is upright again. The goat effigy has a new hat. The scarecrow, King No Rain, has been dusted, repositioned, and now wears a faint smile carved into his spoon face. At sunset, the village gathers for one final Thursday rite, the weather ledger reading. Bertha, in her sky accountant regalia, reads aloud all weather events from the past month, including footnotes, foot soaks, and 2 alleged breezes with opinions. Each entry is met with nods, groans, or respectful silence. Then she reads tomorrow's forecast. Whatever it is, it will be received. No one cheers, no one sighs. They just accept it, because that's the point. As night falls, a mist rolls in. Not heavy, not hostile, just mist doing its job. Back in your loft, a new note waits, tucked under a barley biscuit. Balance is not stillness. It's the quiet agreement to keep adjusting. P. You tuck it beside the others, wrap your now slightly damp again blanket tighter around you, and fall asleep listening to the air reorganize itself. The week you feel has found its middle, and the stones are still listening. You wake to a strange sensation, dryness, not parched or brittle, but soft, forgiving dryness, the kind that clings to your sleeves like memory and smells faintly of old parchment and warm wood. The air is still cool, still thick with the stories of the week, but the relentless dampness has finally receded. You step outside and everything gleams, not from rain, but from relief. It's not quite sunny, but the clouds are scattered, thin and aimless, drifting like well-fed cats that no longer care what the villagers are doing. Today is the final drizzle, not a storm, not a soaking, just a gentle curtain-closing mist that passes through the village one last time to say, "We're done here." The morning begins with a walk. Everyone joins. It's called the rain path, a slow, meandering trail between the barley and cabbage fields, marked by pebbles shaped like teardrops and wooden stakes painted with sky-colored dye. The villagers carry bundles of herbs, lavender, mint, thyme, tied with twine, not for ritual, but for scent. The idea is to let the air reclaim itself from mildew and soot. Sister Platia leads, humming a tune only the goats seem to recognize. Henrik follows behind, barefoot, letting the grass whisper up his ankles. At one point, the entire line pauses as a frog hops across the trail. The procession waits. The frog hops again, then sits on a rock and watches. "You may proceed," Garen announces after a moment. The frog does not object. At the halfway mark, the procession stops at the old willow, where the very first weather note was written, allegedly on a turnip, but now commemorated with a plaque made from polished slate. The inscription reads, "We are always beneath something. May it not always be blame." Everyone places their herbs at the base of the tree. Then a single bell is rung, not a chime or warning, just a soft, accepting note. It lingers in the mist like punctuation. As you walk, you begin to notice the changes. The goat effigy has been taken down and respectfully composted. The scarecrow now wears a crown of dried flowers. The puddles have evaporated into ghost circles of mud. Even the apology table has been cleared, wiped, and replaced with a folded cloth and a bowl of seeds. Back in the village square, a final gathering forms. It's not a festival, not a sermon, just people standing under a sky that finally feels like it's listening less aggressively. Father Gernwin offers a few words, not loud, not dramatic. "We survived," he says. "Again. We'll do it again. But not today." He places a folded prayer into a small tin and sets it on the chapel steps. It reads, "Thank you for remembering to stop. Dinner is simple. Soup made with the week's remaining vegetables, served lukewarm and without commentary. One last drizzle begins just as people finish eating, a kind of exhale from above, soft enough to ignore. You sit with Henrik and Garen under a thin awning. The sky's leaving us alone now," Henrik says. "Or just found someone else to lecture," Garen replies. They both smile. Then the rain stops. Entirely. Not abruptly. Just ends. Like a story that found its final line. The clouds scatter further, no longer looming. The frogs fall silent. Even the goat in the corner of the yard finally lies down, unbothered. You return to your loft. The blanket is dry. The biscuits are dry. Even your dreams feel less damp. A note waits for you, written in tidier script than usual. If it never rained, we'd never gather. If it never stopped, we'd never rest. Welcome back to the stillness. P. You place the note with the others, then lie down. Let your breathing match the rhythm of air through old wood and slowly settle. Nothing drips, nothing aches. The sky is full of space again. The clouds no longer frown, and you, soft and warm and almost weightless, drift into the long hush that comes after remembering nothing lasts, not even the weather. And now, as your breath slows, let the mist of the village fall away. Let the clouds, the stones, the frogs, the barley, and the bells fade gently from your thoughts, like footprints in softened mud. You've walked the rain path. You've listened with the Thursday stones. You've danced with umbrellas and eaten moon soup beside frogs who refuse to cooperate. And somehow, through it all, you stayed dry enough inside. Let that inner stillness linger now. Feel your body soften beneath the weight of warm blankets. Let your shoulders release the last traces of the drizzle. If a single drop clings to you, let it slide off gently, like a story that no longer needs to be told. The rain has stopped. The fields are resting. The sky, too, is finally asleep. You're not beneath the clouds anymore. You're beneath something quieter, something that hums only in the language of dreams. Let your thoughts drift like the final mist. Let your breath follow the breeze. No more rituals. No more weather. Just rest. You've earned it. You're home. And the sky knows. Good night.